Welcome to another edition of Carnivore Bites. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric Lopkin. And, I like today's agenda, Dr. Lopkin, because, as always, there's some very serious matters, but there's a lot of, I think, some humor in it as well. So I think it's going to be a good show for our listeners. And we'll start off with a 60 Minutes interview, which was a puffball interview with our esteemed president. But even with that, he screwed it up, didn't he? The pandemic's over, which is probably
really did.
Oh, go ahead. Say that again.
Well, you're saying the pandemic's over. He's actually repeated that. He said that at the Detroit Car Show.
Yes,
but it is
much to
amazing.
The chagrin of the Democrats.
Oh yeah, it is amazing how often he contradicts himself. How often the White House has to walk back his comments.
Taiwan again included in this interview.
Yes, he said American troops would defend Taiwan. Now, this is the fourth time he said that. The White House immediately started walking him back. But it is amazing, the media has been complaining that he hasn't done sit-down interviews. When he does one, we see why he doesn't do them often.
And it was because a puff-piece interview. I thought it was a, excuse me, just 1 second. It was shit-ass interview, no follow-ups, no questions about the border. I mean, my God, Colonel Clown could get through that one, but Bozo in the White House fumbles again. It's just stunning.
It was amazing. I was very disappointed in Scott Pelley. I used to have a lot of respect for him when he did the CBS Evening News. He did a couple of softballs, but more importantly, he failed to follow up on a number of things, left a whole bunch of topics out that really needed to be addressed, like rising crime rates, like the border. The only thing he really did nail Biden on is inflation. And Biden's responses showed how out of touch he is. He was like, "Oh, it's up only an inch." I love that. And nobody could figure out what he was talking about until Greg Gutfeld on Fox made a comment where he held up a chart. And on the chart, inflation was up about an inch. And he says, that's probably what Biden was referring to. Somebody showed him a chart and inflation was up about an inch. But Pelley actually hammered him on the fact that, it's only up a little bit from a month ago, but it's at historic highs that haven't been seen since the 70s. And Biden just laughed it off.
Well, he does that a lot. Either laugh or just blow it off. And it's, again, his temperament. He has none. He always had a shitty temperament. He was always got this macho thing going on. But now that he has dementia, like you said, many, many episodes ago, that it just gets exasperated, doesn't it?
It does. But, I'm starting to wonder if somebody's not telling them to laugh. Because you have Biden laughing off these inappropriate moments. You've got Kamala Harris cackling at the worst possible times. Did somebody tell them, "Oh, just laugh"? It'll make
I think you have a really
human.
Great point, a salient point, that maybe they know you're dealing with, frickin' facts, two absolute morons, and they probably told him, when you get into a difficult time, a difficult situation, instead of burying yourself further, just laugh. And it's
I'm wondering if that was the instruction. I'm wondering if somebody told them to do that.
But let's get into the whole walk it back person or team. I mean, isn't that just exemplary that he's not in charge? And isn't it crazy? Imagine having a team or a bunch of people. Basically, their job is the walk back team. And no one can tell me any differently. It's not just by chance or happenstance. There's a walk back team. They're ready. Anytime he's got a mic, they're right there in real time.
Well, Dana Perino on Fox talked about this. And for those of our listeners who don't know Dana Perino's background, she worked in the press office for George W. Bush. And she was saying if they had to walk back as often as Biden gets walked back, they would have been pulling their hair out. She actually made a comment. She can't imagine how much alcohol Biden's press team needs to deal with this stuff.
And she's pretty tame. She's pretty diplomatic and nice. I love her.
Oh, yes.
But she doesn't really come out with the knives often. But yeah, they must be. You got to be just comatose. I mean, once in a while, take that. But it's like, oh, he's going to be there again. They had the bunny rabbit during Easter. It's just, and he hasn't done a press conference since February, and he won't before the midterm. There's no way I'm not a betting man, but it's never going to happen.
No, this was the last interview before the midterms. And even if he does a press conference, he won't take questions. He's been doing that for quite a while now. He'll make some statements and then walk off. And if he does start taking questions, they tend to pull him off because he's not allowed to do that.
Then he actually does say, "I'm not allowed," or they told me not to say that. Really, also, you alluded to this, or basically articulated this last week, but just to kind of reiterate, when you really do this family is dysfunctional. I mean, it's disturbing. Hunter, that speaks for itself. I'm not a big fan of Jill. Sometimes, I don't know, she dresses a little inappropriate at times. Let's leave it at that. If that was Trump's wife, they'd be all over her. And then the whole thing, like, Hunter, and then you got Bo, who's supposed to be, this amazing pillar of moral strength. Yeah, but yet his wife is sleeping with. I mean, it's like almost like the Munsters. It's just totally dysfunctional. And taking showers with your daughter. Oh God, it's brutal.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like DCF could have you arrested.
It's an incredibly dysfunctional family. They've been protected by the media. They've been protected by fellow politicians. But honestly, the more that comes out about, well, especially Hunter and Bo's wife, but now that Ashley's diary has come out with all sorts of allegations of improprieties that Joe did with her. The only thing I keep thinking when I hear these is the theme from Deliverance starts going through my head.
Yes. Dueling banjos. Dun, dun, dun,
Yes.
dun, dun. It's basically a trailer park in a $6 million house. And speaking of a $6 million house, two of them or whatever, $3 million. How did he do that? Was it just magical, or is he an investment guru? I know he's a genius, and basically he was in financial problems not so long ago. How on $180,000 or $180 or $60,000 on a senatorial salary, and you only make $180 as vice president or close to it? Yeah, you could have maybe one $3 million house, two. How does that happen? Was he a guru on Wall Street? How did that happen, Dr. Lopkin? Surprise, surprise.
Oh, well,
I guess he might have been the big man, huh?
Yeah, a lot of it came from influence peddling and his brother's business. But the New York Times just did a piece revealing how many congressmen and senators have been involved in inappropriate stock trades. Here in Connecticut, our own Joe Courtney and Richard Blumenthal have been nailed for what would be illegal stock trades, because they're making these trades while they're serving on the committees, making the rules for what these companies can do. It's how Pelosi made her money. It's how Biden made his money.
They're grifters.
Yes. Well, it's not even grifters. It's insider trading, pure and simple. They have inside information of what laws are going to be passed, how it's going to affect certain businesses, and they trade stocks in these businesses. And again, the New York Times just did a whole piece on this, and it's not limited to, Pelosi's gotten the headlines, but it's not limited to a couple of congressmen or a couple of senators. This is widespread corruption, and it's on both sides of the aisle.
No doubt. But how is this different? We always point fingers at third world countries. How is this different than that? Don't banana republics do that, Dr. Lopkin?
Well, banana republics don't necessarily pass laws, but I mean, yeah, it all goes back to do as I say, not as I do.
You're great
Martha,
liberals, yes.
yes, Martha Stewart went to jail for doing this, but if you're a congressman or a senator, oh, it's fine to spread insider information.
Yes. And speaking of financial irregularities, we'll switch to the senatorial races. Dr. Oz, maybe not the greatest candidate. He's actually was like 15 points behind. The poll just came out. It's within the margin of error, 3. I think Fetterman's really losing steam. And basically, it just came out today, I believe, that he has liens, like not just one, the trust fund kid who never worked till he was 45, and that's questionable, has like several liens on many properties or all of his properties. So he's qualified, sure, and I'm a
Yeah,
NBA star.
Yeah, more information is coming out about Fetterman, but honestly, I think the biggest factor in that election is that he has refused to take questions. He has basically been pulling the Biden playbook, campaigning from his basement. He does not want to debate until almost a month after early voting has started. It has brought up the question that Pennsylvania residents are asking: is he capable of doing the job after his stroke? And I feel for him having had the stroke. No, it's a terrible medical condition to have. Yes, a lot of people recover from it, a lot of people don't, but it does take a toll even in the best of circumstances. And when he started avoiding questions and getting belligerent, people started asking, wait a minute, is he actually
Do you agree that he's losing
mentally
momentum?
capable?
Do you think
He's
losing momentum?
He's absolutely. I don't think he's losing momentum. I think he's lost it.
Agree. Good point. Yes. Very interesting, though. And it brings up another subject, Dr. Lopin. This whole it used to be early balloting was for very old people, people in the military service. I think it undermines our democracy, and it's not a Republican or Democratic issue. I mean, Fetterman, so you vote today, which you can do, right? Or any candidate, unless anybody's talking about it. So you voted for Fetterman, and it comes out today. He's got liens on several properties. He comes out with his medical report that he might be forced to issue, and all of a sudden you go, God, he's really not all that great. Oh, I already voted a month before. It's an election. They have a date for a reason, don't they?
Yeah. The amount of early voting is ridiculous. It does not take, yeah, it does not take 6 weeks to get the votes in. Absentee ballots should be given to people that need absentee ballots. If you are physically unable to get to the polling place, yes, you can get an absentee ballot. But now the Democrats have been sending them out to everybody. And it's part of, they're making excuses. I actually met somebody running for a local office here in Connecticut, Democrat, spouting all sorts of nonsense. It was very funny, actually, in a sad sort of way. I was sitting with a couple of very diehard Democrats, and as this guy was talking, these diehard Democrats are going, "Oh my God, he's a moron." So I mean, this was something that went beyond party. This is someone who should not be running, and he was spouting how he spoke to a representative from the Biden administration, and they said voter suppression is going on in 30 states. It's like, no, voter suppression is not going on. The Washington Post debunked this myth. But the Democrats know they're losing, and now they have to make excuses. And they've been pushing early voting and absentee ballots because it's easier for them to rig votes. And they're trying to rig votes because right now there is an effort in I believe, almost half the states in the country to remove deceased individuals from the voting rolls so that the voting rolls are actually accurate. The Democratic Party has filed lawsuits to keep the dead people on the voting rolls.
The Democratic Party has disevolved, though. I mean, again, we talked about this before. I wouldn't let them run a gas station, but their fixation and their aptitude, quite frankly, of holding on to power, whatever it takes, is reminiscent of Stalinistic kind of regimes. I mean, they become there's always corruption in politics, but I think the modern day socialist Democratic Party has taken it to a new level. It's at any cost ruining someone, destroying a reputation, rigging an election. They're more than willing to do it. And even also having candidates like Biden and Fetterman that are clearly not capable and saying, well, just run anyway. Power is more important than performance. I mean, what they did to America, knowing you had a feeble old man running for president and putting that charade on the American people, that's undermining democracy.
Well, I mean,
it pales in comparison to Trump.
Right now, you have Biden, Stacey Abrams, a couple of other very prominent Democrats yelling about how the biggest threat to America is the extreme MAGA candidates. Now, whether you agree with this or not, if you believe that the extreme MAGA candidates are the greatest threat to America, why would you, as the Democratic National Committee, fund extreme MAGA candidates in their primaries?
Well
They're doing
done
this
analysis.
because they think, oh, well, if we get a more extreme candidate against us, we'll have an easier chance to win. Maybe you should be putting up better candidates if you're that worried about it.
Yeah, or if to your initial point, which is fantastic, if it's such a threat and it can be rip the very fiber of American democracy out, it can't be all that bad in your eyes if you're going to fund these people that possibly could actually get elected. Might not be that big of a threat.
Right. I mean, if you honestly believe an extreme MAGA candidate is that big a threat, you're taking an awful chance by making sure he or she wins the election, because they can then beat your Democratic candidate and be in power. And to a large extent, it would actually be the Democrats' fault for funding them.
Agreed. Now, on the whole political spectrum, presidential electoral spectrum, I'd like your opinion. We got the Mar-a-Lago. We got now in New York the attorney, what is it, Attorney General? Yes, I believe it's the Attorney General filing lawsuit against the Trump family and Donald Trump himself. Doesn't it show? I think there was an editorial by Dick Morris. It's really, and it is nothing new here, but how scared they are of Donald Trump, the orange threat.
Yeah, Donald Trump lives rent-free in the heads of Democrats, and I've come to the point. I'm not a huge fan of Trump as a person. I don't care for him. I did like his policies, but the AG of New York, first of all, the AG in the Southern District, who's the one who's going after him, this is a political position.
She's a political hack, too.
Well, she's a hack, but this is a position that people use as a stepping stone. Rudy Giuliani was in that position before he became mayor. Politicians have come from that position for decades. So she's trying to make a name for herself. And right now, Trump is the elephant, when you're on safari. That's the big bag, when you want a bag. But the AG laid out their case, and it shows not just a bad legal case, but a complete misunderstanding of how business works. Because what she was doing is she's claiming that they exaggerated the value of their real estate properties in order to get loans and use them as collateral. Well, when you go to a bank, you don't tell them what the value of the property is. They assess it independently
Of
and
course they
tell
would.
you
What are you saying? Yeah,
what the value is.
yeah. I want a
So
home equity loan. My house is worth $8 million when it's a
e-
trailer park. Yeah, no problem.
exactly. So they didn't do this fraudulently. The banks, the lenders, they independently said this is what it's worth. So I mean, can Trump be indicted over this? Yes, because an AG can indict a ham sandwich if they want. But is the case actually going to go anywhere? No.
I think she tried this about a year ago, and I think another court basically dismissed it. Not the exact charge, but another charge against Trump.
Yeah, she's been going after him for quite a while. She was going after him before he was president. Because again, he's the elephant. You bag the elephant, you make a name for yourself.
Oh yeah, it would be propel her to Democratic stardom. She would be the Elvis, the rock star of the Democratic Party without a doubt. But let me, is there a bigger issue, or not maybe a bigger issue, an issue? I just get a feeling there's increasing Trump fatigue among Republicans. Maybe the polls don't show it, but I know most of my conservative, because, okay, you had your time, you screwed up the election, forget about the inconsistencies, or he never should have been that close. He lost a grip on in the debates. And the Mar-a-Lago, yeah, I get it. It's a witch hunt, but isn't it just time for a change? And maybe DeSantis, young, smart, articulate. What do you think?
There is a lot of Trump fatigue among Republicans and conservatives. He does have a diehard audience that they're still pissed about what happened in 2020. They want him to come back. But the bigger picture, actually, most Republican and conservative voters want to move on from his personality, from his ego. And the big problem is he keeps being drawn back into the spotlight by the Democrats because they want to make him the issue in the election because they don't have any real issues to campaign on. They haven't accomplished anything. And the more they prop Trump up, going, oh, we have to stop Trump, we have to stop Trump, the more the pro Trump people go, oh, well, we got to defend Trump, we got to defend Trump. But there is a big part of the population, and you're not going to see these people represented in polls. You're not going to see them represented in the mainstream media because the mainstream media wants to portray all Republicans as extreme MAGA Trumpists. That the fact of the matter is, right now, I believe there are more Republicans that want Ron DeSantis to run for president than Donald Trump.
I would, and let me just interject one thought on that. We said this months ago in New Hampshire or Iowa, I believe. I think Trump is a house of cards. I think people just need an excuse to walk away from him. I believe that if he loses in the straw poll in Iowa or loses in the primaries in New Hampshire, or even before that, but these two clear cases, I believe it would give people, Republicans, an excuse to say later, dude.
Actually, I don't even think it necessarily needs to wait until then. If Trump-backed candidates don't perform strongly in the midterms, I think that's going to get people starting to move away from him. Even if Trump-backed candidates win and the Republicans take the House and the Senate, if they don't do as well as people think they should, that's going to start people going, okay, maybe he's not the powerhouse. Maybe we do need to start moving on.
I think that's a real possibility. And speaking of DeSantis, how beautiful was it? Shipping, airlifting 50, my God, 50 migrants into Martha's Vineyard, who, by the way, all They had all the right signage on all their properties. Black Lives Matter and everyone's welcome here. But oh my God, 50. And their support systems were going to be overloaded and they couldn't get these people out of there fast enough.
Well, not only couldn't they handle 50 additional people, what I found really hysterical is that they mobilized 120 National Guardsmen to take care of 50 people. It's like it it couldn't have been more comedic, their response. And Massachusetts is, they have said for a long time, they are a sanctuary state. Well, Florida is not a sanctuary state. Texas is not a sanctuary state. Arizona is not a sanctuary state. If you are a sanctuary city or a sanctuary state, you should be prepared for migrants to come, because you're inviting them and saying, we have the services and we will take care of you.
And we
And
welcome,
now,
we want you.
yes, and now the hypocrisy has been exposed. And of course, Democrats are yelling, "Oh, it's political theater. It's just a trick." Of course, it's political theater, because the mainstream media did not cover what was going on at the border until the governors started doing this. The Biden administration is still denying there's a problem, but now more and more Americans are going, wait a minute, there's a real crisis at the border. And
Or also, oh, go ahead.
what
Go ahead, sorry.
Biden does, and the extreme liberals that want these open borders don't seem to be appreciating, is that the problem at the border isn't the migrants that are coming over and turning themselves into ICE or to officials so they can be processed. It's that the forces at the border are so overwhelmed that fentanyl and are being muled across the border in unprecedented numbers. They're taking from drug dealers enough fentanyl daily to kill the entire population of the United States. And that's what they're catching. That doesn't count the people that are getting away.
That is a national emergency. And again, Mr. Biden is supposed to be Joe Lunchpail, the common man, could give a shit. And plus, again, every time he talks, it's like, whoa. He actually answered a question. I don't think he was supposed to. Someone asked him, do we have a border crisis, or what are we going to do about the border? He says, well, it's unfeasible, or some word like that, to deport them because they're from other places like Cuba and Venezuela, which
Right.
would invite obviously more illegals here.
Well, what he was actually referring to is to deport an illegal immigrant. The country that they are being deported to has to be willing to take them back. And these countries, Cuba, Venezuela, are not willing to take people back. That's
you don't
why
want prisoners, do you? They're opening
right.
up their prisons.
Of course, that's why it's unfeasible. But I mean, the problem is bigger than that. And it also goes to show the real extreme liberal, anti business, anti corporate agenda, because when they thought the opioid crisis was caused by Purdue Pharma, they unloaded both barrels. They went after Purdue Pharma like nobody's business. AGs from across the country, the federal government, everybody went after them. But now that the problem is because it's being trafficked across the southern border, oh, that's okay. We don't need to do anything about it.
Quite well said, yes. And speaking of the southern border or the South, I believe this could be finally, and I know this, you got to brace yourself because it's very, very sad, the end of Beto O'Rourke. How it even started, I don't know, but he's falling farther and farther behind for the gubernatorial election in Texas. And I think one of the turning points when he tried to turn that school shooting tragedy for his own political benefit, and one of the officials basically called him a sick son of a bitch. I thought that got legs. That stuck.
It did. What he did after the school shooting was absolutely horrific.
Despicable.
When these things happen, we need to come together and find solutions. And they're never the knee-jerk solutions of, oh well, we have to ban all automatic weapons, or we have to ban, or whatever the knee-jerk solution is. The knee-jerk solution is almost never correct. You actually have to dig deep and look at what's going on. The mental health crisis, are the existing gun laws actually being enforced? We would have a lot fewer guns on the street if existing gun laws were actually enforced. So Beto immediately made it a political issue, and that backfired on him big time. But I think there's also something else going on with Beto O'Rourke, because Beto was, and we've talked about people like this for a long time. Jeff Zucker over at CNN, Beto, people who kept failing upwards.
Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah, and we're starting to see blowback to these people. Zucker was fired. O'Rourke is falling down in the polls. They're starting to go, no, forget it. We have to be rid of him. Even Schumer said Pelosi's days are numbered. People are starting to realize that the fact that they know their name, the fact that they did something 20 years ago that might have been effective. I mean, that's the same thing here in Connecticut with Richard Blumenthal. I mentioned how ineffective and incompetent he is, and someone went, yeah, but he was really good when he went after the tobacco companies 20 years ago. It's like, that's great. He did something 20 years ago. What's he done in the past 2 decades?
The Beatles had a great album in 1969.
Right. People are starting to see, okay, you know what? We need to start looking at people more carefully. And these folks who have been failing upward more and more are starting to, fall by the wayside. And it's absolutely hysterical how some of them are reacting. I mean, because it's not just about failing upwards. Some of these, we've also used the term born on third base and thought they hit a triple. Well, Andrew Cuomo just gave an interview where he's whining about how none of his Democratic friends came to his defense when he was accused of sexual harassment. Gee, I wonder why they backed away from him. People are starting to realize, okay, we really need to start looking at these people.
Yeah, I know the other thing about the Democratic Party or liberals, they love you, and then when you're of no further use to them, they take out the long knives, and you're like a bad habit later.
Let's not kid ourselves. That the Republicans are good at that also, and they're
but the Democrats take it to a science.
Yes, the Democrats have elevated it to an art form.
There
but
you go.
It happens in both parties. They do what's politically expedient. There's people in both parties born on third base, thought they hit a triple.
No doubt.
Folks who have failed upwards. This is not unique to the Democrats. It's a part of our political structure. It's a part of our industrial structure. And we need to start looking at these people and go, no, you're incompetent. You're not good at what you do. Forget it. You're gone.
I would agree. Now, I'd like your insights. I'm sure our listeners would as well. Zuckerberg and the Meta empire, I believe it lost $71 billion.
Yeah, part of that is because of the falling stock market. Part of it is falling ad revenues. Meta is at, or maybe actually just beyond, its peak. TikTok is coming up. There are a couple of other smaller social media sites that are now starting to take pieces out of Facebook. Even the company's own platforms, WhatsApp and Instagram, they're still growing, but they're taking people away from Facebook. The fact of the matter is, Zuckerberg tried to make Facebook his baby. He wanted to force people to do things his way. And he did it by censoring what was put on the platform, which, by the way, for those of you who were unaware, the courts sided with the state of Texas, saying that the Texas law that a lower court said was unconstitutional, that stated Facebook and Twitter do not have the right of free speech to censor the people on the platform, that was now upheld. So Facebook cannot censor what you're saying. Twitter cannot censor what you're saying anymore. Google, YouTube, they are all going to be facing more legal challenges. I think this is going to go all the way up to the Supreme Court, but I'm pretty sure the Supreme Court will find that, yes, these platforms do not have the right to censor you. But that censorship also took a big bite out of Facebook. They're still the 500-pound gorilla in the room, but they're starting to fade. They're no
Yeah,
longer at their peak.
they also have a demographic problem. It is not the platform of young people. You mentioned TikTok,
No,
there's Instagram, others, but no person under 30 is really their life does not revolve around Facebook. It's grandmothers sending pictures to their kids or
it's
about
gra-
they're posting that.
it's grandmothers, it's seniors, getting pictures of their grandchildren. It's families keeping in touch, but it's also about businesses who have as traditional media, the networks, cable networks, etc., as they faced a shrinking audience, businesses very often turned to Facebook and Twitter to supplement their marketing. And what Facebook has been doing is they're redoing all of their business pages to force businesses to spend more on advertising rather than using organic growth. Well, Facebook advertising isn't all that effective, and certainly not compared to organic reach. So businesses are getting frustrated. So they're actually, where they would be getting their money, they're alienating that demographic.
Yes, again, Zuckerberg. I don't know if he stole it or he invented it. Not a dumb person, but I never thought he was a business icon. That's not really his forte. But I'm not really a big fan of Facebook, and I think they're political hacks. Zuckerberg's a political hack, and bon voyage. I wouldn't shed a tear, but I might shed a tear about this: the economy. A Fed just announcing a huge rate increase, and also announcing coming pain, reminiscent of the 1970s. Time to get your leisure suit out, Dr. Lopkin, because they're also predicting increased unemployment. And the Fed also announced that these rate hikes and the inflationary problem could easily lead to a recession. Not that we're not only in one, but I think I think the report comes out like October 31st, the GDP numbers right before the midterms. I don't think that's going to help Biden. Hopefully, he doesn't take a victory lap before that comes out like it did a couple of weeks ago. Also, there's indications that the leading economic indicators has just fell for the 6th month in a row. Your comments, both economically and politically, its relevancy.
Yeah, leading economic indicators have indicated we are in a recession, and it's not going to stop anytime soon. I love all of these people that come out and said, "Oh, we're predicting that there will be a recession." No, no, no. Recession is 2 quarters of negative GDP. We've had that already. We are in a recession. FedEx came out just recently saying they expect a more severe recession in 2023 because they track packages and how much shipping is going on, and people are buying less because inflation is up.
Plus, job losses are starting to heat up. I know the job market's still great, but I think jobless claims did increase, not by a huge margin, but I know people in the corporate world and many companies are either forecasting, predicting, or actually doing layoffs in huge numbers.
Yeah, there have been a lot of businesses already laying people off. So even though the job numbers still look strong, you really have to look at a couple of numbers within the jobs report. Everybody pays attention to that top number. But what really tells the story, first of all, is wage growth. And wage growth has not kept up with inflation. So people are struggling, even those working multiple jobs. And the participation rate. And the participation rate has been very low. What does it mean when the participation rate is low? Well, that's one of the factors that keeps the unemployment rate low because they don't count people who aren't participating. So it gives the illusion that more people are in the workforce than really are. We've seen the participation rate stay low since the pandemic. And now the productivity numbers have been very low. I'm sure most of our audience has heard the term in business quiet quitting, which is the trend now of millennials just doing the bare minimum at work so that they don't burn out. They want to have their own lives. And, I don't blame them for wanting to have their own lives. But if you don't give your all at work, don't expect raises and don't expect promotions. So all of that is dragging down the economy. And inflation is caused by supply and demand. When you increase the amount of available money, demand gets increased, but supply doesn't. And there have been some very severe supply constraints. So every time you hear the Democrats roll out another spending bill, that's another way they're going to increase inflation and cripple the economy more.
And some people have actually alluded to the fact or suggested the fact a lot of these things could be by design. The more you make people dependent, you destroy the free enterprise system. If I said that 30 years ago, 40 years ago about the Democratic Party, rightfully so, I'd probably be laughed off the platform. But the radical Democratic Party, I'm not so sure.
I mean, remember, it was the Clinton administration that got people off of welfare, off of government programs. That was the real Democratic Party. Now the Democrats have been hijacked by the far left. And they
the anti-Semitic far left with Khalid basically making a statement that Israel is contrary to progressive ideals. And what's his name? Jerry Nadler from New York.
Yes.
But that's a little too late. When did these Democrats, we said it before, Jewish Democrats wake up and say this party does not have the interest of Israel or the Jewish people?
No, they really don't. Traditionally, they did, but the folks that have been supporting Israel are being shouted down again by these radical left, by the squad. Let's not forget AOC being brought to tears by the fact that the Democrats and Republicans united to provide Israel with defensive weapons to fight off the terrorist attacks that keep coming from Palestine, from other Muslim nations. God forbid they should be allowed to survive. And that's the thing. Israel has never been against a two-state solution. They have said they would support a Palestinian state as long as the Palestinians recognized Israel's right to exist. And time again, we've come close to having agreements, and the Palestinians
1990.
Yes.
Clinton
and
was
the
surprised how much Israel gave up, and Arafat was the one, again, historical amnesia, was the one who turned it down because basically his whole vested interest was keeping the conflict going, both politically and economically.
They have refused time and time again to accept that Israel has the right to exist.
Yes. There's also, it's getting, well, not that it wasn't to begin with, it's getting increasingly dire in Ukraine. We talked about this, I believe, in our last Carnivore Bites podcast. that Putin and his oligarchy are becoming more and more desperate. They're calling up basically inscription into the military. He's threatening the use of nuclear weapons. Also, you had a NATO official claiming that we need to be ready to have a war with Russia. It's very scary. It's not a stable situation, to say the least.
It's definitely not a stable situation. Yeah, we heard again Putin saying that he would not hesitate to use nuclear weapons. He has reinstituted the draft and he's expanded the draft because they're so desperate for soldiers to any male under the age of 65.
So they get Social Security and a weapon.
Right. So they're desperate. And I mean, personally, I think Putin has lost it. But I was also watching what was going on. And again, this may be, this is complete speculation. I have no evidence that this is what's happening. But I couldn't help notice that Putin ratcheted up, his threats right after he met with China. Now, let's face it, if Russia goes to war with NATO and China stays out of it, China is the big winner.
Huge winner.
Yeah.
Just let them feed on themselves.
I have to wonder if China isn't egging Russia on.
They have a strategic plan to replace the West, and I put nothing past them. No question about it. Very much could very well. We'll have to keep abreast of this, but let's end on two more whimsical notes. Still in the realm of politics, you had Kamala, the vice president, Ms. Harris, another word salad that a community bank is within the community and it's part of the community, and let's smoke another joint. Dr. Lopkin?
The community banks know what's going on in the community because they're in the community because they're community banks. And, I really think actually both Biden and Harris need to have mute button installed so that their handlers can be off stage. And when they start rambling like this, they can just hit mute and stop them.
Is she politically finished? I don't know about finished, but I think she's severely damaged. She could have been. I don't believe that because she failed in the primaries. She checked off the right boxes. I think the Democrats Democrats interested in winning is looking past her.
She is another one of these people that failed upwards. Remember, in the primaries, she didn't even make it to Iowa. But she got on the ticket. And of course, people keep saying, well, Gavin Newsom's going to be running for president. And Pritzker over in Illinois has floated ideas about running for president. Really, first of all, when was the last time that you had a president in your own party and had party people going, oh, no, I'm running? And not just saying, we have to get rid of the guy in charge. They're leapfrogging over the second in command as well.
Yeah, it's total irrelevant, both of them. Unfortunately, they're our president, and when we tie it back to Ukraine, you have a diminished, weakened executive branch. If you had a strong leader, possibly something could be worked out in Ukraine. But you have Tweedledee and Tweedledum, and I mean dumb with exclamation points. So
they're
both
severely damaged. And actually, come to think of it, I just realized when the last time politicians tried to leapfrog the president and vice president was, and it was Ronald Reagan running in the primary against against Ford. Yes. That was the last time.
No question about it. And we'll end on this. You said this when we were on terrestrial radio, that once something's on the net, it's always on the net. And you had a genius weatherman. I don't know if it was on a date. I think it was a dating site, I think it was a date. Anyway, had some pictures of his Johnson and some other compromising things. And it leaked out or was posted, and he's no longer the weatherman.
Yeah, he lost his job. And the people that need to take a lesson from this are the 20 somethings that keep posting things on TikTok. Because guess what? When you're 45, somebody's going to find these things and they're going to come back to haunt you.
A little lesson from the good doctor. Well, Dr. Lopkin, I thought it was a great show. We're gaining steam. I know that, aren't we? And talk to our listeners about how they can access us.
We are. You can find Carnivore Bites at xvadio.com/podcasts, as well as the Carnivore Radio website, the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Amazon Music, Audible, and any platform that respects freedom of speech. And of course, we want to hear from you. Let us know what you think about what we're talking about. Go to xvadio.com/connect and let us know your thoughts.
Agreed. Now, we are talking about gaining steam. We surpassed CNN online, which is not a big feat. I wonder if we'll ever beat CNN, considering the fact that their star, Anderson Cooper, basically has less now than 1 million viewers. And I know we're ending the show, Dr. Lopkin, but did you see, what's his name? He got schooled.
Don Lemon has.
Don Lemon, I recommend everyone go to YouTube.
Has been demoted to the morning show. Yes.
Oh, better than. But do you see his interchange with the English woman? He had it all queued up. It's hysterical. Well, thanks again, Dr. Lopkin, and thank our listeners.
We'll see you next time.